So, I've been coming here for a while, but for a couple reasons I haven't given my first speech yet. But one thing that I've noticed is that generally the first speech is really awkward. Generally, most of us don't end up talking about ourselves because talking about who you are, that's a big question. We're still trying to figure that out, all of us. And we're still trying to recreate ourselves. And what I've found is that usually people end up not talking about themselves. So that's what I'm going to do, because one thing I really believe in is that you are the average of your 5 closest friends. So I'm going to talk about Zeph, Arya, Dan, Nick, and Nicolette, and why they're my 5 closest, and what I see in them and what I see in me. So my first friend, Zeph, he and I both lived in this city called New Haven, and we both lived near or in, at different times in our life, what people would call the projects. Zeph, black kid, probably the darkest in our school, and he came from a gang family. Now, this is really pertinent because I went to this school, we both went to this school, out of the city. Not only was it out of the city, but it was in a pretty well-off town. We would have to take buses to go to school. And these weren't just well-off kids. Some of their parents were Yale professors, or doctors, or owned multi-million-dollar businesses, while he and I were just regular old kids, sometimes struggling to get by. There were times where he and I both had to wear coats inside our houses because we couldn't afford heat. And so throughout high school, he and I both dealt with this little identity crisis. These kids, they come from different cultures, they don't have the same type of family, and they don't necessarily have the problems we do. Now, do I have anyone Italian in the crowd? Okay, so my school had a really big Italian and Jewish population. And if you've ever been in like an Italian household or a Jewish household, there's this really strong sense of community. Like, Jewish people have these things called bar mitzvahs, and you almost don't have to be, they're like quinceañeras or sweet 16s, but all you have to do is like be related or cool with the family to go, and these things are wild. Absolutely crazy. Like, they throw people up on a chair and they bounce them around. And Zeph and I, we weren't part of that culture. Meanwhile, just about all our peers were. And so we were kind of outsiders looking in. And that's almost how I felt my entire life. Although I've dealt with it and I've come to accept it, that was a really big thing in high school. Now, Arya. Like Tori, I'm on the track team, and right now I'm a thrower just like her, but in high school that wasn't the case. I was actually a sprint captain. I was one of the best on my team, and Arya, he was my co-captain. Now Arya, I kind of saw myself in him, and we ended up becoming really close friends because we used to both be really, really quiet. We used to both be heavy introverts, but both of us wanted to lead, and that's why I'm here. But what's different between Ari and I is that I came out of my introverted phase a little earlier than he did. What was strange is that he would be quiet, he wouldn't be going up checking on people until you put him in a position of responsibility. And he, even though he was quiet and reserved, he was one of the best leaders I saw in high school. And not only that, but he had this double life. He and I used to organize raves and parties. So even though you might think we're just nerdy, like goofy kids in school, we would be making $2,000 in a weekend by renting out this place called Toad's Place and flipping it and having raves. So that kind of represents, in him, I see the duality, how people have mixed perceptions about me as they did about him. And so Nick Robinson, he was also one of my teammates. But unlike Arya, he was really extroverted. He had moved around a lot, and when you move around a lot, you get really good at meeting people and forming new connections usually. Nick and I used to go on crazy adventures, and one of the most memorable ones for me was ended up with us 3 a.m. We had managed to get into one of Yale's residential colleges, basically like one of their battalions, and the security there is a lot tighter than it is basically we started talking to this girl. We got in there, and it ended up with us sitting on a couch and me looking at a Nobel Peace Prize and thinking, how did I get here right now? And I just love going on weird adventures like that, and ended up spending a lot of time in a lot of places that I thought I could never be because of him. And in him, I see more of my adventurous side. My, hey, let's go out on a ride at 12 o'clock at night. Hey, what about we go to New York on a random trip? And that brings us to Dan, Dandy Dominico. As I said, I was kind of goofy, kind of nerdy in school, and Dan was just like this. Just a quick show of hands, is anyone in the Republican Society? Do we have any like conservatives? Yeah, it kind of interferes with Toastmasters. But you guys ever see those like social justice warriors online? Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
My school was like full of those, and it was like full of liberals, right? And honestly, like being here, 90%, if my school saw what happens here, like 90% of them would freak out. 90% of them would probably quit like the first day. Dan was a socialist, but he was nothing like that. He was the most reasonable, logical kid I know. And I really respected that. I kind of saw that. Even though I don't think that's logically, it was one thing I really valued. And then Nicolette. Nicolette was something like a girlfriend to me. And we ended up spending a lot of times adventuring and going out and stuff. But while all my other friends I ended up doing crazy stuff with, Nicolette kind of brought off the softer side of me. I think up here, and just men in general, they like to act as if they're all tough. They act as if they win a lot, or they go out and do crazy things. But Nicolette reminded me, whether it was through just like cuddling and watching X-Files, or her crying to me or something like that, it reminded me that masculinity does have a soft side. And if you're in my company, then you definitely know that I'm a little softy. And so, those are my 5. I hope that told you a little bit about me. And thank you.